This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
With no fees or minimums on checking accounts, it's no wonder the Capital One Bank guy is so passionate about banking with Capital One. If he were here, he wouldn't just tell you about no fees or minimums. He'd also tell you about how Capital One cafes are open 7 days a week to assist with your banking needs. Yep, even on weekends. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank guy. Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
Brought to you by the Spam brand. I'm about to drop some sizzling hot knowledge, everybody. Did you know there's a blue can loved around the world with festivals dedicated to it? That's right, it's Spam Classic. The cultural icon went from fueling the world in the 1930s to earning its own museum. And today there are 12 mouth-watering varieties like teriyaki and Korean barbecue flavored, plus the original Spam Classic, ready to fry up in your favorite dish. Fans everywhere, keep sizzling it up, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Spam brand, sizzle pork, and Learn more at spam.com.
Welcome to Stuff You Should Know, a production of iHeartRadio.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh, and there's Chuck and Jerry's here too. So it's a good old-fashioned bout of Stuff You Should Know, ready to kick you in the duff. Oh my gosh.
A bout? Were we a sickness?
Yeah, some would say.
Oh, dear. I'm ready for this one. I'm so excited because
awesome.
I understand genetics,
right,
and chemistry like I've never understood it before in my life.
Well, I think that a little credit goes to our pal Grabster, who has a knack for explaining very complex science stuff.
And we also need to shout out, as usual, when it comes to science, a kid's website, which is, in this case, Frontiers for Young Minds.
Mm-hmm. That was a really good one.
Yeah, they had a pretty good breakdown on albinism, not albinism.
Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah, and I also tried to find out, it doesn't seem appropriate to say albinos.
Right.
I didn't expressly see that anywhere, but it seems like with how we refer to things these days, that stands out as something that we shouldn't do.
Certainly.
Did you find that, though?
I did not. I didn't. Although there are all sorts of like pro-social sites for people with albinism all over the place. I'm surprised we didn't run into that, but
because I saw it used, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution and just say albinism.
Yeah, no, totally. Or people with albinism, right?
Well, sure, or plants.
Yeah, that's
or an alligator.
That's something that came up. Like certainly you're familiar that not all. It's not just people who can have albinism, but that animals can too. Like every once in a while, you hear about a very rare, like a shark with albinism, or like you said, an alligator with albinism. It's just so stark and surprising. One of the reasons why is because it's exceedingly rare in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
But it's still around. And it's not just mammals that can have albinism too, although it would make a lot more sense if it was just mammals that got it, because it affects a very specific part of the body, the melanocytes, which we'll talk about in great detail in a little bit. But that like a whole cascade of events goes from, or it takes place within those melanocytes, and any part of that can get messed up or disordered. And those are what are the basis of the different types of albinism, as we'll see.
Yeah, and the reason that you indicated that it was super rare to see like a gorilla with albinism, although you can see that, is because, and we'll get into the genetics more specifically, but it's an autosomal recessive trait, which means that both of your parents have to have this albinism gene. So, I mean, it's rare enough in humans when two people fall in love and mate for life and stuff like that.
Right.
But when you're counting on two sharks that happen to swim by that happen to have that express their genes that way, and they happen to, get friendly with one another.
Bump up against one another.
Sure, rub fins.
Sure.
However sharks do that thing.
Right.
It makes it even more rare because you're counting on almost just like, fate or destiny. Well, not destiny. Let's not get hippy-dippy about it. But,
right.
It's a couple of gorillas getting together in the mist that both have this genetic gene.
They wait for the mist to settle, and then they're like, no one can see us, baby.
I just said genetic gene, too. That shows what I know.
So, yeah, for whatever reason, Chuck, whether it's like because the populations are isolated or what, but it does seem to be much rarer. Albinism does seem to be much rarer in like the wild than it is among humans. And even in like some human populations, it's like you could call it not rare at all. Like if you go to some parts of Africa, some parts of Central or South America, you'll find groups that like are fairly small genetically speaking, and albinism has just become kind of like an endemic trait among the population.
Yeah, and I think that's even where the first the word albino was first used in the 1800s in Africa for people that had albinism, and I think the root is the Latin albus or albo from Spanish and Portuguese.
That's right. So when we're talking about albinism, I think most people probably know what we're talking about, but usually when you see a person with albinism, they have either totally white hair or a very light colored hair, usually little to no skin pigmentation, or they can have kind of like a yellowish or pinkish skin pigmentation. They might have eyes that lack color or seem red, which apparently has to do with the blood vessels in the eye reflecting the red light from, back out at you, the viewer. But all of this has to do with a complete and total or a greatly reduced lack of melanin, right?
Yeah, and, if we're going to crumble a myth, we can crumble the myth that you are not, like if you have albinism and you don't have red eyes or pink eyes, then you don't have true albinism, and that's not true at all. There are a lot of different kinds of albinism, and depending on the way the genes express themselves, there can be a range of effects on your body. Ed was mentioned even with in the plant kingdom with maize. There's you can have, and it's not white corn, that's a different thing altogether.
Right.
But because trust me, if you look up albinism in corn, the first thing you're going to see is a corn snake. So you have to type in maize, right, and then you're just going to see white corn. But there are a few different kinds of albinism in maize, one of which basically is no pigment or chlorophyll, and that's not even going to survive because it's a plant. One that will eventually become just a regular ear of corn, and then a third type, which is really interesting, it's striped. And some parts have that pigment and some parts don't.
Yeah, and like if you put two different types of albinism, whether it's corn or humans, together, the person who has both of those different traits probably won't appear to have albinism at all, because you have to have matching gene mutations to have an autosomal recessive genetic disorder. And albinism is one of those, like you said.
Yeah, and interestingly, if you just sort of look at it in a vacuum, albinism isn't necessarily harmful. There can be comorbidities, and there can be other effects that happen, of course, like with things like sun and sunburn and sun exposure, and there's vision problems that can happen, and we'll get into all this more specifically. But just by itself, albinism isn't necessarily harmful to a person or a population.
Right. And there's different types too. There's syndromic and non-syndromic. And syndromic means that you usually have other related health issues. And there are syndromic types of albinism. But one of the things that tends to go along with albinism, along with a lack of skin and hair pigmentation, is vision problems, which we'll talk about. But there's other stuff too. They've correlated autism with albinism, which I couldn't find a lot on.
Me neither.
But it made me wonder, there's also a correlation between vision problems and autism. And it's possible, they theorize, because no one knows at this point what the correlation is, but they theorize that it has to do with a low level of visual input leading to autism. So it's possible that if you have a low level of visual input because of albinism, that could lead to autism as well, potentially.
Right. So much we don't know, but we do know that albinism is a neural crest disorder. And this basically means, we can get as as wonky here science-wise as you want to, but the easy version is it means that it's very early in embryonic development when a group of cells is folding into a crest. And at this point, if something is going on with those cells, it can affect a lot of different things moving forward, including albinism.
Right. Because those neural crests, when they form the extremely early embryonic stage, they form cartilage, bone, skin, smooth muscle cells, neurons. They differentiate into a bunch of different stuff. But the point of that is that like the gene that is responsible for whatever type of albinism you have, like differentiated like really early on, long before many other genes were active. It also points out, Chuck, I think something that's worth mentioning, that at this point, because it's a genetic disorder and apparently an extraordinarily early in development genetic disorder, there's no treatment for albinism. Everything you're treating is just to take care of the symptoms that come along with it.
I think that's a good overview to get us going, don't you think?
I think so too. Yeah, let's take a break. I smell a break.
Yeah, well, in fact, I could just be done and we could just run a bunch of ads if you want to do it that way.
I don't think everybody would like that. I think they'd rather hear us muddle through albinism.
All right, we'll do a couple of messages from our sponsors and we'll be right back.
This is Tamara Judge from Two Teas in a Pod with Teddy Mellencamp and Tamara Judge. Tamara here. As you know, my dog Rugby is like one of my kids, and I don't play around when it comes to taking care of him. Chewy is where I get everything he needs. He loves food, so always stocking up on treats and toys from Chewy, which my husband Eddie likes to buy for him. It always shows up fast, which is exactly how I like things. Chewy also handles the serious stuff, prescriptions, pet insurance, and the telehealth vet visits. And now they're opening up vet clinics across the country. And their 24/7 customer service, they just understand pet people. Plus, with Chewy's 1-year satisfaction guarantee, trying new things is never stressful. Chewy just makes caring for Rugby easier, and that matters to me. For life with pets, the answer is Chewy. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping at chewpanions.chewy.com/teapod.
Joy is essential, and it's also elusive. You can't order it, you can't borrow it, or simply hope it into life. But now, there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. Together, guys, we'll have meaningful conversations with the world's most fascinating people. Entertainment legends, sports icons, wellness experts, and everyday people will share how they find, allow, and experience joy. And I'll offer some of my own tips and takes on seeking a more balanced and harmonious life. If you're craving inspiration, support, and useful tools to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Joy after a breakup, joy as an empty nester, joy after a loss, joy as a caretaker. This new podcast will speak to you. Listen to Joy 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Alec Baldwin. This season on my podcast, Here's the Thing, I'm speaking with more artists, policymakers, and performers like composer Mark Shaman.
Once you've established that you have the talent, it's about the hang. It's the pleasure of hanging out with the people that you're with. You know, Rob and I was always a great hang. We would sit and kibitz for hours and then eventually get around to the music. That's what I mostly think of when I think of him, the time together laughing.
Lawyer Robbie Kaplan.
The great gift of being a lawyer is the ability to actually change things in our society in a way that very few people can. I mean, you can really make a difference to causes in the United States if you bring the right case at the right time.
Marriage equality.
Yeah, Windsor's the perfect example.
Director Morgan Neville.
Film school teaches you all the wrong things about making documentary. What do you want to say? Documentary is all about your ear. What do you hear? I feel like my job is listening really, really hard.
Listen to Here's the Thing on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Why is everyone obsessed with romance right now?
Like everyone.
Your coworker who, quote unquote, doesn't read, is reading romance.
Your mom, book talk. The entire internet.
I'm Sanjana Bhaskar.
I'm Tyler McCall.
And this is Radio 831, a romance podcast. The books, the tropes, the adaptations, the drama, the discourse.
And what all of it says about how we actually love, yearn, and obsess.
We're going to Wuthering Heights,
which, for the record, is not a romance novel.
And yet it has haunted the romance genre for 200 years.
We're getting into dark romance, age gaps, certain Russian hockey players,
and sentient objects in love, which is a thing.
That's the kind of conversation we're having every episode.
Listen to the Radio 831 podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Stuff you should know. So when most people think of albinism, Chuck, what they're actually thinking of is a specific type called oculocutaneous albinism, or OCA, which is the most prevalent form, but it's also the most distinct form as well.
Yeah, and this is, if you've ever seen the musician Johnny Winter or Edgar Winter, or, a lot of times people with albinism will be cast in movies unfairly. A lot of times it's the bad guy because they have a unique look. And, it's Hollywood, and that's kind of what they do.
They look different. They must be sinister.
Exactly. And we'll get into that later on, too. But it's funny, though. I did see a couple of videos where people with albinism sat and watched movie characters of people with albinism, and basically just sort of made fun of it. They were just like, "Oh, okay, another bad guy. That's a surprise."
Right? Yeah.
But that's what you're talking about. That's OCA1 is when you're talking about maybe someone with the pink or red eyes, the lack of pigment in the skin, that white hair.
Right. And that one. So there's somewhere between 4 and maybe even 9 different forms. But most scientists who study albinism recognize maybe 4 to 5 different forms. The rest of them are these really, really almost exotic, rare mutations that have occurred in these really isolated communities where albinism is actually common enough that it just is mutating into new forms. So most people say 4 to 5 forms. And if you're like the easygoing type, you just call it type 1, type 2. If you're high-strung like me, you'd probably call the most common one OCA1A. Mm-hmm. There's also OCA1B, OCA2, OCA 3 and 4, and so on. Actually, not so on. That's all of them.
Right.
But the thing that all of these, or at least most of them share in common, is that there's either a total or complete lack of pigmentation. And then again, it affects the eyes because it's that ocular cutaneous albinism. And so with this lack of pigmentation, that one that most people think of when they think of albinism, OCA1A, there's like no pigmentation whatsoever. And everybody with albinism has those pigment forming cells, melanocytes. It's just for different reasons, those melanocytes are not producing pigments to varying degrees. And in OCA1A, they're not producing pigment at all.
Right. So like you kind of said at the beginning, if you see someone that has the red or pinkish eyes, those are the blood vessels that you're seeing because of the lack of pigment.
Right.
And that's what's also going to lead to those vision problems. Like you kind of hinted at it, a lot more light is going to be entering your eye that's not being absorbed like it would if you have pigment in your eye. It's not being diffracted. At the very least, if you have albinism, you're probably going to be really sensitive to light. But it can also actually damage the retina as well.
Right, which is a big one. As we'll see, it's a huge problem. The idea that it's called photophobia, like deep sensitivity to light.
Yeah.
And then also you just can't see as well. Like you can, in turn can lead to problems with learning and high school drops. It's like a cascading effect that all just begins with not enough pigment in the eye. It's really astounding what just something that seems kind of small has like the impacts that it has.
Yeah. And the great thing about most school systems these days is they make great efforts for any kind of, kid in school that has any sort of a challenge to say like, all right, well, we have something to accommodate for that now. But it's taken a long time to get to this point, and we still have a long way to go. But, you can imagine somebody with albinism in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And what schooling must have been like when it was basically just like, sorry, you obviously can't keep up. You're struggling to learn to read, and we don't quite know what to do with that. Right.
And they always punctuated with, and by the way, everything your classmates are saying about you is true.
Right. No, hopefully teachers were at least kind about it even back then.
Maybe.
But kids are always mean.
Yeah, for sure.
They're getting nicer, though.
Are they? That's great. Man, that's a huge improvement.
Well, they are, but it's, obviously there's still bullying and a lot of problems with that stuff, but the kids are getting better because I think we've proven as parents and educators that can be taught, that you start them at a young age teaching about facial differences or just any kind of differences, and that, that we're all the same. It sounds very free to be you and me, but we're all the same on the inside.
Right.
And so that kind of like teaching that stuff actually works. That's why it's frustrating when people push back on that kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't want my kid to be nice. You can't make my kid be nice. It's a First Amendment issue.
That was just a little soapbox moment for me.
I like it. I put one foot up on there with you too.
Oh, thank you. There's room.
So there's room for you and me, Chuck.
Yeah, Jerry's always up here.
Of course. She won't stop. It's a little much if you ask me. So, Chuck, before we keep moving on, because I think we need to talk about that social aspect of albinism now.
Sure.
But before we hit that, I want to say there's one other thing that one of the big differentiators between the different types of albinism is, like we were saying, at what point in the process of creating melanin, the pigmentation is disrupted, means that you could actually produce some levels of pigment or some different types of pigment. Mm-hmm. Like we have a couple of types of pigment that we produce, us humans. Eumelanin, that's the money melanin everybody thinks about. It's like it produces like the browns and everything like that. It gives you your tan. If you have brown or dark hair, that's all eumelanin. But there's also pheomelanin, which is kind of a red-yellow pigment producer. And people can have types of albinism where you're producing no eumelanin whatsoever, but plenty of yellow-red pheomelanin.
Right.
So that will adjust the different kinds of skin pigments you have. And sometimes you'll see people with albinism who have totally pale skin, but like a big shock of yellow gold hair. They're producing plenty of pheomelanin, just no eumelanin. And those are the different gradations of albinism have to do with how much and what type of melanin can escape out into the skin, into the eyes, and into the hair.
Yeah, and interestingly, birds and mammals are the only living things that have melanocytes, which are those cells that produce the melanin. Mm-hmm. So this is why you're not going to see a lot of bright colored mammals. You're not going to see a lot of bright green or blue mammals. And then when it comes to birds, but you're like, wait a minute, why are humans, basically shades of sort of brown? And why can birds be like pink and orange and red? It's for a lot of reasons, and we talked about some of these before, but one of the reasons is their diet. Right. Like in the case of the flamingo, a flamingo is white except for their diet, which turns them red or pink.
Yeah, they can also produce certain kinds of chains of amino acids that produce blue or green. They can combine some of the pigments they produce with some structural stuff, like in the way that their feathers are built to create entirely new colors. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but that's typically birds. And the reason they think that birds are so colorful is because the visual acuity in the bird world is a little more important even than in the human world, as important as it is for us. But there's also another thing that melanin does is it can provide like structure and toughness. Like if you look at the outer layer of fur in like a cold dwelling animal, that's usually going to be fairly dark. And one of the reasons why it's dark is because it's also providing like structure and toughness to that outer layer of fur, not just, preventing light to get through, UV to get through.
Right. But then you start scritching underneath. You get to that little baby soft, lighter colored undercoat. Mm-hmm. Even with my dog, Charlie, who's got the longer hair, she has an outer coat and an undercoat. and that undercoat is different. It feels a little different and it looks a little different.
Yep. The exception to that, of course, is polar bears. They're not actually producing any kind of white pigment. I think it's the structure of their hairs. They're clear, hollow tubes. So they refract light so that all of the light comes back at you.
Yeah, just Google green polar bear if you want to freak your kids out a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It sounds susical.
It's a green polar bear.
Uh-huh.
So while we're on that, though, we want to talk a little bit about the sort of social implications of having albinism. And, it's interesting that it's much more common in parts of Africa, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, but that's also where you can find some of the most stigma and people being ostracized, which is, I don't know, it's really kind of sad that it seems like something that is more common might be accepted a little bit more, but that's not really the case, is it?
No, it's not. And unfortunately, the reason why is because people with albinism in Africa are, in some parts of Africa, we've learned over the years, you can't just be like in Africa because it's just so ridiculously different culturally and geographically.
Sure.
But in some parts of Africa, I believe Nigeria, parts of Nigeria, if you have albinism, you are extraordinarily valuable. I think the body of a person with albinism is worth about $75,000 US.
Oh, really?
In places where people are living on like $6 a day.
Is it for like medical research?
No.
No. Oh, no. I know what you're talking about.
For witchcraft and sorcery.
Yeah.
They're considered the bone. There's lore. So here's the problem. Not only are people with albinism subject to being ostracized and isolated because they're different and they look different, the people not just in Africa but in other places where education is less prevalent and less standardized and science is less relied on, I guess. There's just a lot of myth and lore surrounding albinism, and so people think that it's like contagious.
Right.
So you just want to stay away from those people because you don't want to catch it. And then all the way across the spectrum to their bones are made of gold dust, and if you get your hands on the cadaver of a person with albinism, you can create potions and sell them to people, and in the wholesale market, you would pay $75,000 for the corpse of a person with albinism, and it happens. Like people get murdered for their bodies because they have albinism, and it's a despicable practice and trade. But part of it is like figuring out how to get across to like these large groups and populations the science behind all this, and that at the very least it's not contagious, and at best their bones are not filled with gold dust. So please stop chopping them up, kind of thing.
Yeah, and as far as here in the United States, if this is like we talked about, kids teasing or staring, as parents and educators, you should be armed, I think, with the barest bones of information, at least, to be able to say, oh, well, that is somebody with albinism, and that means their body doesn't produce pigment, and so their skin looks different than ours does.
Right.
And if you're a parent, you can just leave it at that. And that's really all you have to do. Like, if you want to listen to this episode and get into melanocytes, knock yourself out.
Sure.
That's parenting plus. But at the very least, you should be able to describe it. And like, I know when I was a kid, and this is not a knock on my parents, they were both smart people and teachers, but
just scared to death of people with albinism?
No, but they probably would not have known what to tell me.
Sure.
They probably would have said, oh, that's an albino. Full stop.
Steer clear of them. That's contagious.
No, I don't think that either. But I just think we have a duty these days, like to educate ourselves to the lowest level of understanding other people,
Yeah, that's something that I've carried with myself for many, many years is like people didn't explain the why to me. And so there didn't seem to be purpose to anything. I couldn't
totally
come
agree.
to appreciate the reasons why we were doing things, the strategy to football. It was just get out there and make sure that person doesn't get past you kind of stuff. No reason why. And that's like a stupid example, but it's a good case of it that like nobody stopped and said, here's the grand picture. Here's the grand scheme of things. And the more information I would have had, the more I would have appreciated life and probably appreciated other people too. So I agree with you completely. I think that that is a part and parcel with making the world a better place is providing more information to kids especially.
Yeah, and again, this is slightly tangential and soapboxy, but I think in our day, and certainly before our day as kids, there was a lot of just like shut up and don't ask questions sort of attitude.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing to
No, all you should do is ask questions and get questions answered. My Lord, it's frustrating.
And the whole because I said so kind of thing, which was so prevalent when we were kids. As I understand, it's going the way of the dinosaur, which I think is great.
It is, but boy, when you accidentally catch yourself saying it as a parent, you're just like, oh no, I'll be right back. I'm going to go flog myself.
Right. Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of parent groups just waiting to flog you outside your door too.
the because I said so crowd.
Yeah.
They're like the guilty remnant, the leftovers. They just stand outside your house and smoke.
Right.
Which we're 2 episodes away from finishing, by the way. That happens tonight.
That's great, man. Congratulations from all of the Stuff You Should Know listeners.
I just have to say, and I knew this was the show that got progressively better and more bonkers, but boy, what they're throwing down in season 3, I am all over it.
I don't believe I made it that far.
What?
Yeah, no.
I thought you said you wish you could go back and do it over again.
Yeah.
For the first time.
I don't think I realized that they kept going
2.
after season 1.
Yeah, there were 3 seasons.
Okay, well, good. I got some stuff to watch.
I got to reframe everything now. I'll watch this on your recommendation.
So, Chuck, I feel like we can button this up by saying society has a long way to go toward learning how to treat people with albinism equally.
Agreed.
Yeah, but let's do that.
All right. Well, let's do that, and let's take a break, and we'll talk a little bit more about what limited amount we know about what causes this right after this.
This is Tamara Judge from Two Teas in a Pod with Teddy Mellencamp and Tamara Judge. Tamara here. As you know, my dog Rugby is like one of my kids, and I don't play around when it comes to taking care of him. Chewy is where I get everything he needs. He loves food, so always stocking up on treats and toys from Chewy, which my husband Eddie likes to buy for him. It always shows up fast, which is exactly how I like things. Chewy also handles the serious stuff, prescriptions, pet insurance, and the telehealth vet visits. And now they're opening up vet clinics across the country. And their 24/7 customer service, they just understand pet people. Plus, with Chewy's 1-year satisfaction guarantee, trying new things is never stressful. Chewy just makes caring for Rugby easier, and that matters to me. For life with pets, the answer is Chewy. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping at chewpanions.chewy.com/teapod.
Joy is essential, and it's also elusive. You can't order it, you can't borrow it, or simply hope it into life. But now, there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. Together, guys, we'll have meaningful conversations with the world's most fascinating people. Entertainment legends, sports icons, wellness experts, and everyday people will share how they find, allow, and experience joy. And I'll offer some of my own tips and takes on seeking a more balanced and harmonious life. If you're craving inspiration, support, and useful tools to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Joy after a breakup, joy as an empty nester, joy after a loss, joy as a caretaker. This new podcast will speak to you. Listen to Joy 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Alec Baldwin. This season on my podcast, Here's the Thing, I'm speaking with more artists, policymakers, and performers like composer Mark Shaman.
Once you've established that you have the talent, it's about the hang. It's the pleasure of hanging out with the people that you're with. You know, Rob and I was always a great hang. We would sit and kibitz for hours and then eventually get around to the music. That's what I mostly think of when I think of him, the time together laughing.
Lawyer Robbie Kaplan.
The great gift of being a lawyer is the ability to actually change things in our society in a way that very few people can. I mean, you can really make a difference to causes in the United States if you bring the right case at the right time. And
Marriage
win.
equality.
Yeah, Windsor's the perfect example.
Director Morgan Neville.
Film school teaches you all the wrong things about making documentary. What do you want to say? Documentary is all about your ear. What do you hear? I feel like my job is listening really, really hard.
Listen to Here's the Thing on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What did Black music, food, and culture teach us about who we were becoming?
2016 was sort of that last era of monoculture, where we still consumed things in community.
From Beyonce and Rihanna.
Everybody wanted to be Beyonce.
I don't think we'll ever see another Rihanna.
To soul food, memory, identity, and the stories we carry through Black culture.
What does it mean to be Black and eat in America?
So we were this group of people who knew how to work the land, who knew how to live with the land.
We make it do what it do.
Therapy for Black Girls is bringing together the conversation shaping Black life right now.
You will never make me feel bad for being a Black girl, for being a Black American girl, ever.
Therapy for Black Girls is bringing it all to the mic. Listen to Therapy for Black Girls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Stuff you should know.
All right, so we're back. We know, and we've talked about this already, that it's a recessive gene that causes albinism.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, all right, so that's a recessive gene. This is like when you nod off in biology class.
Oh, man,
wake
this
up.
is when I woke up.
You wake up and you go, oh, okay, well, I know the answer is a recessive gene, but how does that happen? And the secret to it all is a little protein called tyrosinase.
Right.
How would you pronounce it?
Just exactly like that, tyrosinase.
Oh, okay. Those
tyrosinase. But that's how it's spelled, tyrosinase. But tyrosinase surely is the way that you'd say it, right?
I think probably so.
So that's the one that is like the catalyst for basically everything that comes after to create melanin, right? Whether it's eumelanin or pheomelanin, doesn't matter. Tyrosinase is like the beginning of it. And so in that OCA1A, the type of albinism where you just utterly lack pigmentation altogether, tyrosinase is impacted. So when your tyrosinase is impacted, your melanin production just doesn't happen in your melanocytes, and therefore you have OCA1A albinism.
That's right. And if that happens early on, that whole chain reaction is going to shut down,
mm-hmm.
and that's when you're going to have the complete lack of pigmentation. In the other forms, it might affect it at different stages along the way
mm-hmm.
Of that melanin creation. So that's why you might, not be totally absent of pigmentation.
Yeah, and again, like there's slightly different processes that produce eumelanin and other processes that produce pheomelanin. So any one of those things is a very complex, intricate production to create melanin. And so that means that there's a lot of different points where that process can break down. I just find that extremely fascinating. And then also one other thing I find fascinating, when you talked about autosomal recessive traits,
mm-hmm.
did you mention that means that two parents can both have the gene for albinism, but neither one have albinism, but they're considered carriers? And so they can pass it along or not pass it along to their kids?
Well, yeah, because, I think this is something that you would often see is two parents without albinism have a child with albinism, and someone might just be like, well, how does that work?
Right.
Well, it's just very easy. It's because you have to have both parents. And if obviously these parents didn't have both of their parents that had that genetic mutation, then they're not going to have it. But it's interesting. It's one of those things where you sort of like the sharks bumping in the night.
Did you say sharks first?
I think I did say sharks. That's a whole different problem if that's bumping in the night.
Right.
Sharks bumping in the night. It's like you wouldn't know this. You probably wouldn't know this about yourself if you only had one. If you were just a carrier, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you probably wouldn't find this out until you had a kid.
Exactly. That's one reason why there's a lot of lore and myth around albinism in less educated areas. That there's a question of paternity.
Right.
This can't possibly be my kid.
Sure.
That kind of thing. But then on the same token too, as far as passing it along, if you have albinism and you fall in love and reproduce with a person who doesn't have albinism, but also isn't a carrier of albinism, your children won't have albinism.
Right. Got to have both those parents.
You got to have both those parents that pass along both those genes, because you can have siblings that don't have albinism.
Sure.
Because I think you have a 25% chance of getting albinism, or of it being passed along to you. You have a 50% chance or 75% chance of it not being passed along, but there's a different combination of what's not passed along.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I also thought was interesting was when Ed, toward the end, started talking a little bit about in the animal kingdom, and, the fact that it's for sure a disadvantage if you're living in the jungle and you're an animal, because coloration is a big part of your camouflage and survival, blending into your natural habitat as both a predator and a prey. So if you are an alligator or a gorilla with albinism, you're definitely at a disadvantage in the wild. I don't know that it's definitely in the wild, because he said if you have like a bunch of lab rats just sort of doing their thing, then it's really not going to affect them much at all. But, we talked a little bit in the Cave Dwellers episode about these organisms, and I think reptiles that live deep in these caves that are essentially have no pigment. And in there, it doesn't really matter. And in fact, some of the vision stuff might be an advantage.
Yeah, like the fact that you don't have pigments like bouncing light and refracting it off, I guess basically keeping it from bouncing around, means that you should be able to get more light, more visual information in very low levels of light. So that would be an advantage for sure.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting.
It is interesting. So I guess before we go, Chuck, we should talk about, there's a lot of other conditions that can happen that have to do with pigmentation or melanin that really don't have anything to do with albinism, which really kind of goes to show you like just how complex melanin production actually is,
Yeah, and we talked recently, I don't know why, but we did mention vitiligo recently. This is not the same thing as albinism. This is when you have those sort of very defined areas of your body that have no melanin. It is similar because it has to do with melanin, but not albinism.
No, they think that there's either some sort of really bad sunburn, a mechanical insult, like something happened to your melanocytes, mechanically, or you might have had like some sort of chemical reaction, and that whatever trauma happens to the melanocytes, it triggers your immune system to target them as foreign invaders. So they think now that vitiligo is some sort of autoimmune disorder.
That's right. What else is there?
There's poliosis, which I looked, and no, it does not have anything to do with polio.
Right. They mistitled this one, I think.
They really did, because it has nothing to do with it. But that's the one where someone will have like just a shock, like a little patch of white hair, just totally pigment-free hair.
Yeah, I know a couple of people that have that. The little, like the white schwa.
Sure. Like, remember John Henson from Talk Soup?
Yeah, he had the white schwa.
Great example of a person living with poliosis.
That's right. Emily calls any kind of hair thing like that a schwa. I don't know why.
No, it makes sense. I've heard it before, but I don't know what it means. I think it means exactly what it means, right?
I think she just means what, like if I poof my hair up with a big, like a pompadour, she would call that a schwa.
Okay, I gotcha.
It's very, I think no one outside my household really understands what it means.
It's a tuft of hair.
Yeah, it's a tuft.
Okay,
I don't think I realized that's what poliosis was.
Yeah, that's what it is. What did you think it was? You thought it had to do with polio, didn't you?
I totally did, actually.
I did too, until I confirmed, nope, just terribly named.
There's also Waardenburg syndrome. This is an abnormality with the pigment in the hair and skin and eyes, but this is a congenital disease, also not have anything to do with albinism.
Right. I think that's about it, huh? There's piebaldism, the kind of piebald horses where there's a big white patch, usually like a large one, sometimes on the chest.
Beautiful.
It's a type of horse. It's actually a condition that humans can have as well. It's just that they bred a certain type of horse. They selected it in a certain type of horse called the piebald horse.
I have a tuxedo cat. I'm kind of curious about how that happens. I'm going to look into that.
That's classy.
Yeah, classy tuxedo cat.
That's right. Well, that's it for albinism, huh?
That's it.
If you want to learn more about albinism, you should go out and do that. There's a lot to learn, and you could do worse than starting at Frontiers for Kids on their albinism article, because it's a pretty good one. And then just go from there. And since I said just go from there, it's time for listener mail.
Yeah, this is short and sweet. We got called out on something, and whenever we get something wrong, we certainly like to, and not just a correction on a fact or something, but when we get something wrong that we shouldn't have gotten wrong, then we like to call attention to it, and we try and do better.
Totally.
This is from Natalie from California. I wanted to start out by saying I'm a big fan of the show. Found it during lockdown and made a big difference for my boredom levels while working from home. But I was a bit disappointed, guys, listening to the Chowchilla bus kidnapping, as multiple times you guys implied that not being able to spell means that you're not smart. And you are totally right, Natalie. I didn't even think about that. But Natalie says, I'm an adult with dyslexia, and I cannot spell to save my life. In spite of this, I'm a highly intelligent and successful adult. And it's fairly ableist to correlate ability to spell with overall intelligence. And I expect more. And Natalie, you are totally right. And that is on us. And big apologies. We did not think that one through.
No, indeed. We definitely weren't trying to throw any shade on people with dyslexia at all.
Of course not. But, it's another thing. Like, we all learn as we go through life. And when you learn on the air, it can be a little embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah, just a tad.
But that's what we do as a job, and so we take that.
Yeah. So was that from Natalie?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that one, Natalie. We appreciate it. And if you have something you want to call us out on, we'll take it. And you can address it to stuffpodcast@iheartradio.com.
Stuff You Should Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
This is Tamara Judge from Two Teas in a Pod with Teddy Mellencamp and Tamara Judge. Can we take a moment to talk about Chewy? I get everything for rugby from Chewy. His food, the treats, I'm constantly reordering, the toys he destroys in minutes, even his supplements. And it always shows up fast. Chewy also handles the serious stuff, prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. Their 24/7 customer service actually understands dog moms like me and cat moms, bird moms, reptile moms, all of us. And with Chewy's 1-year satisfaction guarantee, trying something new is never stressful. For life with pets, the answer is Chewy. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping at chewpanions.chewy.com/teapod.
Joy is essential, and it's also elusive. But now, there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration, support, and useful tools to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Listen to Joy 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.